Now, here's an album I've been meaning to review for a long time. Today, we're talking about A Broken Frame by Marche. A very warm welcome to you, my friend, wherever you may be in the world. This is one I've been meaning to talk about for a long time. So I put it on this morning while I was having my coffee, and I just immersed myself in it. It is, of course, the cover of Depeche Mode's A Broken Frame by the Greek duo called Marche. Now, please forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. I've heard people pronounce it as Marsheux and things like that, but I believe it is Marche. And if I'm getting it wrong, I do apologize. It is, of course, a cover of this timeless classic, the A Broken Frame album. If you've been following my Depeche Mode album review series, what did I rate this? I think I rated it about 7 out of 10 or something like that. As I said, to me, it wasn't a perfect album. Of course, nothing is perfect, but I think we as Depeche Mode fans have a special place for this in our heart. And with the iconic photography by photographer Brian Griffin, and it has some great songs like Leave in Silence, Nothing to Fear, The Sun and the Rainfall sort of being the standout tracks for me on this one. But looking at this cover, I mean, let's just jump into this. I'm not going to go into sort of excruciating detail like I do on the album review series, but I just want to sort of talk about this album and give you my feelings. Now, I must give a shout out to my good friend, Mr. Mark Wibrow from the Electronic Cafe. Thank you, brother, for sending this to me. If you're a fan of electronic music, then do check out the Electronic Cafe that is run by Mark Wibrow and Andy McNabb. They do a fantastic job in bringing awareness to new artists, and indeed, Mark is kind of my educator. Every now and then he'll pop me something in the post. So thank you for this, Mark. I had heard of this before, of course, but getting it on a CD with a nice handwritten note, encouraged me to listen to it. And boy, what can I say about this? Very, very, very surprised from the onset. I mean, comparing it to the original A Broken Frame, what they've done here is they've really, really paid homage to the original. They've respected the original a lot. I've often said that, when it comes to doing a cover, you never want to cover something to the point that it's, sounds exactly the same. I think, as an artist, you want to cover something and bring something new to it. You want to put your stamp as an artist onto it. And there are covers of certain songs that we love that kind of are just a kind of, a repeat of the original thing. And then you get covers that, go very, very far off the wall and bring something interesting to it. This, however, it's somewhere in between. It really pays respect to the source material. There are noticeable differences, like obviously there are key changes in a lot of the songs. And that is because obviously Marche are a female duo, and the keys have been changed on songs to fit the register of the voices. There are sort of I would say pros and cons. There are no cons to this, really. I guess something that is interesting, I mean, you guys, I've said this before, growing up, Depeche Mode was I always felt like a stranger listening to Depeche Mode, because there were not many people who were into it, because it's not the kind of mainstream kind of music. This, however, kind of takes the A Broken Frame album and it kind of moves it in a more sort of accessible direction. Now, this, I don't want to say that this is better than the original. God help me if I say that. But I think in some ways it's a little bit more enjoyable. It does sort of take the original album and kind of make it a little bit more accessible. But it also has the benefit of technology, and it has the benefits of hindsight. So this album is able to take the source material and reinterpret it, but also with the benefit of new technology, and with the benefit of hindsight, seeing, what works and what doesn't. They were able to kind of do, I don't want to say a better version than this album, but I mean, I think there are, we might do a poll afterwards to see your reviews. I don't feel comfortable, when I say, which is better. It's like saying, which do you prefer, a banana or an apple? It's just not the right way of putting it. But I guess what you can ask people is, which album do you enjoy more? And as I say, as a Depeche Mode fan, I've always liked this album. But listening to this one, it's actually made this go up higher in my estimation, because the delivery on these songs is, as I say, it's more modern. And because with the transposing of keys slightly higher on some songs, it just gives the songs a little bit more lift. And what it tends to do is it really ups the game in this. It once again shows how great, Depeche Mode's songs are. And I bow down to the sentient being, which is Mr. Martin Gore, which I think is one of the most amazing songwriters in the history of pop music. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I don't think I am. The track listing on this cut that I have here, it's exactly the same order, starting with Leave in Silence, My Secret Garden, Monument, Nothing to Fear, See You, Satellite, The Meaning of Love, A Photograph of You, Shouldn't Have Done That, The Sun and the Rainfall. It also has a bonus track on here, Get the Balance Right, and boy, did they get the balance right here. I really, really enjoyed this. They've interpreted this album really, really well. It's quite close to the original, but different enough to make it artistically interesting, and the fact that it's female vocals as well, it just gives it another dimension. I was checking up Marche on the internet because I don't know much about them, and I may well reach out to them for an interview. And I'm reading this from Wikipedia. It says, Marche is a Greek synthpop duo formed in Athens in 2003. The group is composed of vocalists, songwriters, and keyboardists. And it says the name Marche is derived from the first syllables of each band member's name. Both members sing almost exclusively in English. It also says Andy McCluskey of OMD said, he had something to say about the band, and he said, I quote, I do have a soft spot for Marche. I have to say they have a certain sort of wispy, melancholic charm. Well said, Andy McCluskey. I absolutely agree with that. This really does take the original album and it just lifts it to another level. I really found myself really enjoying it. And then, of course, afterwards, I put this on afterwards. And this really, repeating myself, helped me see these songs in a different way, hear them in a different way. It has actually raised my appreciation of this original Depeche Mode album, because once again, it's made me hear it in a different way, but also take it back to the source material and just realize fundamentally they are great songs. The arrangements here, once again, very true to the originals, but with a different spin on them, definitely a lot more modern, and, with the benefit of, modern technology, more bass and things like that. I must say, even on the original album, we have the songs which people tend to take the piss of, The Meaning of Love and A Photograph of You. The way they're presented on the Marche album is they've actually taken those two songs, which I generally tend to skip when I'm listening to a Depeche Mode album, but they have taken The Meaning of Love and A Photograph of You and presented them in a way which makes it far more enjoyable, far more listenable. So once again, this album has raised my love for this album. So without going into too much more detail, I guess you can tell based on my reaction so far that I really, really like this. Okay, let's jump into the 5 questions. Question 1. If I was to lose a song from this album, once again, very difficult, because as I always say, listening to an album in context, there may be songs that you don't like as much, but they fit well within the arc of the story. But I would probably lose The Meaning of Love or A Photograph of You. Yeah, probably A Photograph of You. But once again, the way they've reinterpreted those songs really gives the songs a new lease of life, I feel. Question 2, which is the most radical track on this album? And by radical, I mean something that kind of stands out to me. I do like their interpretation of Monument, actually. And indeed, when I reviewed the original Depeche Mode album, I think I rated Monument as the most radical track on the album too. Question 3 is usually a question for albums we've been listening to for a long time, and that question is, which was the song which resonated strongest with you on this initially? And that song for me was Nothing to Fear. Question 4, which is my favorite song on this album after listening to it several times? I'm going to go with The Sun and the Rainfall, and indeed that is my favorite song on the Depeche Mode version as well, and many of you have said The Sun and the Rainfall is your favorite too. And question 5, what am I going to rate this out of 10? Once again, it is a perfect interpretation of the original source material. In my opinion, this is how you interpret cover material. There are two ways of interpreting cover material. You can lean a lot into the original, or you can take it completely left field and just run away in a completely different direction. The whole idea behind this is to be very, very respectful to the source material. So it is very similar to the album so far as, syncopation and melody, and they haven't changed too much, although there are changes and stuff. So it does really respect the source material, but at the same time, sonically and everything, I think it is superior to the original record. Forgive me, just because it's more modern and with the benefit of hindsight. With all these factors, they have interpreted the source material, but they've really made it their own. They've lifted it, and I'm going to give this album 10 out of 10. Now, if you think I'm being too generous, remember, you have to rate things on merit, and it's always just my personal opinion. I guess when I rate Depeche Mode's albums, I sometimes think I'm a little bit more brutal on Depeche Mode because I'm such a huge fan. I hold them to such a high standard. The reason I'm giving this 10 is it's just, taking it for what it is a cover album. I think I've said everything already. It just honors the source material, and without thinking about it too much, it is a damn good listen. So I really, really enjoyed this, and this is one of my favorite Depeche Mode albums, even though it's not a Depeche Mode album, but it is, that it isn't. You know what I mean? And now, my friend, it is up to you. Question 1, which track would you lose from this album if you had to? Question 2, which track to you is the most radical? Question 3, which track did you sort of like the most when you heard this the first time? Which is now your favorite track on this album? What would you rate this album out of 10? Let's get the discussion going. I'm sure if you're a Depeche Mode fan and you're watching this channel, I'm sure a lot of you have listened to this. I would love to know your opinions on this. And Marche, if you're watching, I will be approaching you for an interview sometime. I'm really impressed with what I've heard. Yeah. Okay, my friend, just a few things before we wrap up. On the 13th of June, which is next week, that's 13th of June 2023, we have a special event here in London at the Strong Room. Gareth Jones is doing a deep dive on the Construction Time Again album, and he's going to be doing it in quad surround sound. He's never done this before, so if you'd like to meet Gareth Jones in a chilled, calm environment with like-minded people, listening to some of our favorite music, listening to Gareth going into a lot of detail of how the sounds and the songs are produced, then do click on the link in the description below. All the details are there. Also, if you're not aware of it, I have teamed up with photographer Brian Griffin, who obviously was the man who produced the first 5 Depeche Mode album covers, and he has just started a crowdfunder for a book entitled Mode. We have reached our target, and I'm so grateful to all of those of you who have pledged, but if you'd like a copy, there are still about 10 days left on the crowdfunder. The link's in the description below, so get your copy before the crowdfunder ends. As always, my friend, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your support. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like, share this video with any Depeche Mode fans or anyone you feel would enjoy this content. Thank you so much and lots of love. I'll see you on the next video. Adios.